Hello, today is Sunday, December 21st, 2025, and it's the shortest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere, which means that I think in where I am, the sunset is going to be around 5 p.m., a little before maybe, and sunrise will be about 8 o'clock in the morning. But then from here on out, it'll be slowly getting, the length of the day will be getting longer as we continue our rotation around the sun. um, for today, I was going to read another a meditation from Richard Rohr's Daily Meditations, because it's really gotten me thinking about um, the universe and my scientific background and understanding of the Big Bang Theory and all that sort of thing. And I think it really, when you start contemplating those kinds of questions, it can give you some thoughts as to why and how religions have been created and what their basis originally was from, and not to say that they haven't deviated significantly from the original intention, but always humanity struggle with questions of how and why, um, and just wonder and awe in the world, which really does, I think, fit with what I've been reading all week from Richard Rohr, from the Richard Rohr, the Institute Center for Action and Contemplation that he founded. So anyway, the meditation begins with a reading from the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verses 1 and 3. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things came to be through him, and without him nothing came to be. And then the editors write, drawing on the wisdom of Franciscan theology, Father Richard Rohr writes that the Incarnation begins first with the birth of the cosmos, long before the birth of Jesus. And then Richard Rohr writes, what was God up to in those first moments of creation? Was God totally invisible before the universe began? Is there even such a thing as before? Why did God create it all? What was God's purpose in creating? Is the universe itself eternal, or is the universe a creation in time as we know it, like Jesus himself? Let's admit that we probably will never know the how or even the when of creation, but the question that religion tries to answer is mostly the why. Is there any evidence for why God, I'll interject and say creator or whatever, created the heavens and the earth? What was God up to? Was there any divine intention or goal? Or do we even need a creator God to explain the universe? Most of the perennial wisdom traditions have offered explanations, and they usually go something like this. Everything that exists in material form is the offspring of some primal source, which originally existed only as spirit. This infinite primal source somehow poured itself into finite, visible forms, creating everything from rocks to water, plants, organisms, animals, and humans. This self-disclosure of whomever we call God into physical creation was the first incarnation, the general term for any enfleshment of spirit, long before the personal second incarnation that Christians believe happened with Jesus. When Christians hear the word incarnation, most think about the birth of Jesus, who personally demonstrated God's radical unity with humanity. But I want to suggest that the first incarnation was the moment described in Genesis 1, when God joined in unity with the physical universe and became the light inside of everything. Interesting concept. This, I believe, is why light is the subject of the first day of creation. The creation, then, is not only God becoming Jesus. It is a much broader event, which is why John first describes God's presence in the general word flesh. Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 14. John is speaking of the ubiquitous Christ we continue to encounter in other human beings, a mountain, a blade of grass, or a starling. Christ, with quotation marks, is a word for the primordial template, logos, or word, through whom all things came into being, and not one thing had its being except through him. It's from John 1:3. Seeing in this way has reframed, re-energized, and broadened my own religious belief, and I believe it could be Christianity's unique contribution among the world's religions. Well, first off, many things went through my head as I was reading this, and I guess I'm always reading these sorts of things as a questioner, not as a believer, and which has always been, I guess, when I look back, my nature, of course. But as a science-based person, I'm really fascinated by the how. How was the universe created? And Richard Rohr talks about that in his meditation. What existed before that, and what caused the initiation of the creation, and is the universe just one of many universes, or is it just a continuum of time and creation? Because time is a human construct anyway, but is it just a continuation? Some scientists believe that the universe is 13.79 billion years old. It's interesting that they carry that to 2 digits like that. But there is some speculation that it might be twice as old as that as well. There's different scientific measurements that people point to try to come to that. But it still comes back to not only what existed before, but why? What triggered it? What caused it to create? So, and I think it's those kinds of questions that has caused humanity throughout the ages to come up with religious traditions and to create stories of origins and explanations for how the world is and why it is. And I think that those can be interesting. And if you can explore different religious traditions and try to understand their differences in creation stories, and sometimes you'll see some connections between them, even more ancient traditions than the Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, and see some threads of similar thoughts kind of weaving through all of them. And anyway, just lots of things, like I said, went through my mind as I was reading this, and my scientific questioning mind always just is in wonder and awe at creation around us, even our own little world, the Earth, and where we exist. To me, it's just fascinating. And it makes me understand why some people really hold a religious belief, or how religious belief began, and created things that could be manipulated by, again, humanity's desire for accumulation and more, and create empire to control people, and manipulate religious traditions to control people. But it does give me good appreciation for why religious traditions actually are there. It's always the question of why, not necessarily how, although some traditions would claim to also proclaim that too, but really the question of why. Why do we exist? Why are we here? Those are always good questions to ponder. So hope it's given you something to think about today, and hope to talk to you again soon.